As Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo try their best to respectfully engage with the board of the Walt Disney Company Board of Directors, Bob Iger and his people are starting to use name-calling and personal attacks to get their position known at the Walt Disney Company. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is the most cultured man I know, Culture Casino. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I'm excited to talk about all the mudslinging and attacking Grandpa.
Yeah, this isn't the nicest way to go about doing business, and this is a lot of older gentlemen with white hair talking bad about each other. Now, that being said, I do think Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo have been rather respectful because they need to be respectful because they are trying to do business as adults and convince people that they are responsible enough to do business on behalf of a $200 billion corporation, a corporation that was a $160 billion corporation before Nelson Peltz came in and said that he was engaging in another proxy fight. I do have to say that. Market cap is what I'm talking about if you're tracking the stock price there. No financial advice on this channel. But we want to talk about this release from the Walt Disney Company. It is 67 pages. It could be called a white paper because Nelson Peltz has issued a white paper. Trian has issued a white paper. Blackwell's has issued a white paper. Value Act has submitted a slide deck and called it a white paper. And the Walt Disney Company has now released their own to defend their positions. There are so many things coming out of the SEC filings website for the Walt Disney Company right now that we can barely cover it all here. But we're going to do our best. So today, we'd like to talk about Disney's comments on Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo specifically. So right here, we have a track record of significant value destruction outside the consumer packaged goods industry. They do talk about that a little bit more on other slides, but here they're saying that Nelson Peltz is not all that he's cracked up to be. But Nelson is not the focus of this video. Who we're talking about is Jay Rasulo, who was the CFO of the Walt Disney Company. He has 30 years of experience at the Walt Disney Company. He was head of parks and, of course, being CFO of that company until 2015. I would say he has a lot of experience, more experience than you would find at any other company in the world. Culture, am I missing anything? At this point, are there any other companies that are comparable to the Walt Disney Company? I can only think of one that might come up.
Yeah, I don't know that you have any good parallel companies. I mean, if you are only interested in the streaming tech, you would point towards Netflix. But as far as a good peer, I don't think there is one. I think the mere fact that Disney's 1/3 of the entire media production of Hollywood and all of its various other businesses, I don't think there's a direct comparison.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think right now Disney is wanting to be a streaming giant more than they're wanting to be a theme park company. And I would see why they might consider someone like Jay Rasulo, who is definitely a theme parks guy, but also, of course, former CFO of a company that also had media networks. If you were searching for anyone who could take a position on that board, he would be high on that list. Former Disney employees would be high on that list, I would think. But instead, they would like to make sure they have Michael B.G. Froman, or whatever his name is, from the Council on Foreign Relations. He needs to be on that board because all of the things he brings to the table, you definitely can't just hire that out, right?
Sure. I mean, 360-degree brand activation is amazing.
Yeah, yes. You can't just go 180 degrees. You can't cover one half. You have to cover the back half, just in case someone does not. If it's only activated on one half, then you might have theme parks that are struggling to please guests, or maybe Star Wars, the greatest film franchise of all time, struggling to keep audience interest. You have to have it activated 360 degrees. Sorry for this joke here. That is the only qualification that the Walt Disney Company lists for Mr. Froman. So the things I want to get into here are these bullet points about Jay Rasulo. At Disney, Bob Iger, not Jay Rasulo, was the driver of the company's strategy and value creation. Okay, I would say that's a little not classy on the part of Bob Iger. And I would also say that while Jay Rasulo was there, Bob Iger was heavy on the praise of Jay Rasulo. Also, he was at one point considered to be the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company, whether or not he got passed over for Tom Staggs, who also is not the CEO of the Walt Disney Company at this point. Last time I checked. This man is great until he opposes Bob Iger. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yes, the minute you oppose Bob Iger, you are no longer great.
Right, and they apparently trusted him enough to send him to Shanghai to figure out what was going on with the upcoming at the time Shanghai Disneyland Park. I believe that project would have stalled without him, or he was tasked with turning around not just Disney's California Adventure, which was a Michael Eisner level disaster, and
Mm.
also Disneyland Paris, which was at the time Euro Disneyland. So this is a man who has turned around several projects, including Bob Iger's crown jewel over there, the China parks.
Yeah, he actually successfully turned around 3 theme park massive disasters by himself.
That's a very good point. His leadership of parks and being the CFO do not automatically translate to leading the creative soul of Disney or building a streaming business. Okay, if that is the case, who is the person that needs to lead the creative soul of Disney and build a streaming business? Is it Derica Rice from CBS? Is it Marielena Lagamassino? Is it Carolyn Everson? Is it Amy Chang or Mary Barra? Are these people the ones that are going to be translating their experience at GM or CVS or Third Point over to leading the creative soul of Disney or building a streaming business? I think that this is a little bit of projection here. First of all, they're confirming that they want Disney to be a streaming business, which
Sure.
I don't really like that idea, but okay, that's fine. They want to be involved in streaming. They want their direct to consumer model here. That's fine. I think it's to the detriment of the parks and to the detriment of the quality of Disney. But okay, do you really need to be the one who leads the creative soul of Disney to be on this board?
Well, my argument would be, as somebody who was formerly the chairman of the board, Mr. Robert Iger himself. I mean, he was a weatherman.
That's a very good point. And he helped with some Olympics coverage and got himself into a little hot water by talking to the wrong Korea about some events there. So maybe that's why he
Uh,
needs Mr. Froman's help there.
perhaps. I mean,
Bob,
and then you get, everybody forgets that you have a wonderful forced labor lover that is currently the chairperson of the board for Nike, that used to run Nike directly as CEO and chairperson.
right? And who
Um,
wouldn't want the head of Nike to be there to lead the creative soul of Disney or build a streaming business?
yeah. Now, if it was Phil Knight, we'd have a conversation, but that's not who we're talking about.
That's a very good point. His book is very good, although I think someone else wrote it.
Oh yeah.
But of course, we would need Jay Rasulo in order for Jay Rasulo to function as Bob Iger, which I think this is the point they're trying to imply here, is that Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo are here to replace Bob Iger's role here, as opposed to being additive to the board. Uh, in order to replace Bob Iger on the creative side, Jay Rasulo would need to watch other people's movies 5 times in order to provide notes on how to improve it, so that you can get a Haunted Mansion or a Little Mermaid or what else has Disney done this year? Oh yeah, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the Marvels. These are all things that, of course, no one like Jay Rasulo could let that quality be produced at
Ant
Disney.
Man and a Wasp: Quantumania
Yeah.
was in there.
These are not movies that are doing so hot right now. So I'm not exactly sure what Bob Iger is bringing to the table if he is the creative soul of Disney. So
Mm.
here we go. No further executive experience at any public company since leaving his role at Disney 8 years ago. Okay, that's fine. His perspectives are stale, given Disney today is a radically different company in an industry experiencing generational disruption. The only item here that they have that they did not have before is Fox and streaming, and more streaming at that, because Hulu existed before 2015.
Well, but my argument for the Fox thing would be they were already a media company. They were already managing linear products. They were already managing, film and television. It's that nothing got added when that was added. The only thing is, as you mentioned, is streaming. That's the only thing that's changed. And you know what? Streaming's not all that hard. It's just an extension of what you were doing already, and the tech is there for them to distribute it. That's why they spent so much money on BAM Tech in 3 different at 3 different points in time. So,
That's a very
It's
good point.
yeah. I'm sorry. I went through this yesterday, pushing back on every point, and realized there's a lot to this.
Yes, and the idea that Jay Rasulo or Nelson Peltz needs to come in here and fix every single problem at the Walt Disney Company. One, I think that they have the wherewithal to do that, but I don't think they would do it by themselves. The
No,
supposed shadow management teams that Bob Iger is complaining about in his filings here that Nelson Peltz has, those I'm assuming that those are not people who are there to push a specific agenda within the company. Disney is there to push a shadow agenda within the company, I might argue.
yeah.
But I think that what they're really afraid of here is having someone come in and say, "Is that really the best way to do this?"
Well, I think, and here's where I'm going to add the flavor, and say, what if they just don't want people to know what's been happening behind the scenes
That's a very
in
good
scenarios?
point. I
Yeah.
say, and I resist that a little bit because
Mm.
if they get on the board, they're going to be under NDAs. They won't
Unless
unless
it's
go ahead.
illegal.
Unless it's a well, yes, that's a very good point. Although I think that considering the large stakes that they have in the company, sorry, I should say Trian Partners and like Perlmutter have large stakes in the company. Jay Rasulo is growing his stake, but at the
Right.
same, I don't think they're going to want to destroy the thing that they've just bought. I think they're going to want to fix the thing that they just bought. But let's move down here to slide 54 to these very specific things that they're saying about Peltz, Isaac Perlmutter, and Jay Rasulo because they're trying to brand them as the Trian Trio. You'll see more of those little jazzy political phrases here, those Trumpian political phrases that Bob
Mm.
Iger is going to be using. Yes, I am comparing Bob Iger to Donald Trump as far as rhetoric goes, going from here on out. Trian
Ooh.
seeks to replace two Disney directors whose expertise is critical to the board. Which ones are those? Are we talking about Maria Elena Lagomasino, who has led the compensation committee and approved all of Bob Iger's allegedly excessive pay packages over the last few years?
Hmm.
Or are we talking about Michael Froman, who has zero media experience, zero experience at pretty much any public company, and he is the leader of the Council on Foreign Relations? Why that is critical to the Walt Disney Company, Disney has failed to articulate a compelling argument here. So even if you're just replacing those two board seats, we have a problem. I don't really see a problem. I see the problem in them saying no, this absolutely cannot happen. Also, Disney has shown that they're willing to add people to the board more than that quote unquote essential 12. They're willing to function at 11 in order to keep Nelson Peltz on the board, and they're willing to function at 13 or even 14 while they bring in their extra people here, those being Mr. Jeremy Darish and James Gorman. So the number of people on the board and the fact that they'll be replacing replacing Froman and Lagomasino, I don't think this is really that big of a deal. Nelson Peltz, Isaac Perlmutter, who owns 79% of Peltz's stake. Again, they keep bringing it up. I don't think it matters. And Rasulo will harm Disney. You've yet to make that case. I understand you're still trying to. We believe Peltz, Perlmutter, and Rasulo would be destabilizing distraction with a questionable agenda when Disney needs total focus on execution. First of all, the distraction is here. You got to live with it, buddy. You're doing a poor job of managing this company at the moment. You have shown no actual long-lasting growth at this point. There are a lot of announcements that came out and a lot of question marks that have come out. I don't see anything right here that says this company is fixed. Yet,
The shocking lack of specificity from the two claims that you just read blows my mind, because they, as you pointed out, they've not made an argument to any of these claims. They're, at this point, it's just claims.
right? They're working on Disneyland Forward. I'll say that, but at the moment, I don't think a new theme park is going to fix the fact that most people see their theme parks as broken at this point. That Disneyland and Magic Kingdom over in Walt Disney World are long in the tooth, as Peltz has said. I would like to see a defense of that charge right there. Show me that these parks are not busted, are not broken, are not grinding to a slow halt while you continue to charge more money for people to get into them. I would like to see a 4-point plan uh, going over how you're going to fix that problem, as opposed to saying, no, no, don't distract us by pointing out all of the problems with what we're doing here.
Right. And again, well, The last line there, Disney needs total focus on execution. Of what?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, Epic is going to build their great game-changing game mode over in Fortnite. I got to say, Lego Fortnite, which is the closest comparison that we have, is really great. It could be something big, but it's not changing the world. It might mean that more children play one game versus another game. This is not something that is going to save the company. And by the way, if this goes well for Disney and Disney decides to try and buy Epic Games, I see a completely different problem there because much like they've done with the Muppets or Lucasfilm or Marvel or Pixar, all of these things start to slowly grind to a halt over 10 years.
Yeah, because they don't know they don't know what to do with anything. They remove the culture that makes a successful and, a successful company. They just pull it all out and replace it with their own, which they think is superior. But the problem is that the culture is what made the thing work in the first place. So Lucasfilm was destroyed faster because they put the wrong person in charge of it. But
Right, and they can blame George Lucas for that. And there are some indications in Bob Iger's book that that George Lucas put Kathleen Kennedy in charge of Lucasfilm without telling her that he was selling the company to Disney. I'm starting to wonder at what the motivations were there and why things happened the way they happened, and if they're actually happening the way that people reported it.
it's a good question.
Yep. Now, this is the last line of this slide I want to read. Despite agitating for nearly 2 years, um, okay, that's an interesting way to put that. Peltz still has not communicated any novel ideas that aren't inane. So we're just now insulting shareholders. Now, I don't think this is a good look for Iger. You can disagree with the ideas, and there are many ways to attack this company, but I don't think calling Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo inane is the appropriate way to do this. This is mudslinging here, and I'll add a little bit more here. They're saying that Jay Rasulo is oblivious on CNBC, and what did he say that was oblivious? This is the quote. And frankly, Iger did the Fox acquisition, which is very hard to understand, which doubled down on the linear business. So if I'm understanding the intention of what Mr. Rasulo is saying here, that Bob Iger pushed the board to buy Fox. And in that, he bought Fox's linear assets. Part of the reasoning, which is over here on the right-hand side of the slide, is because they wanted Fox's intellectual property, which they have done almost nothing with Fox's intellectual property.
Right.
And two, he wanted them so that he could transition to streaming. Fox's streaming assets, the only streaming asset that they had that Disney could not have built on their own quickly was the Hotstar streaming service. And Culture, can you give a 30-second summary on what's happened with Hotstar?
Well, it's now moving on. I don't know how to describe it. They've destroyed it and then tried to get out from underneath it.
Right. So they technically get to keep those subscribers because it's merging with Reliance Media. So they have that high level look at all of the subscribers that we have. And Disney is glad to say they had all those subscribers when Wall Street was only focused on subscribers. But now they have essentially exited that market, except for their tying of a $16 billion asset, which got devalued down to $3.5 billion.
Yeah, which we talked about like 2 weeks ago.
Right. And what's funny is someone pointed out to me, well, if that was really the amount, people would be covering it. Meanwhile, the video was literally covering an article that's covering it. Guys, they lost $12.5 billion and no one noticed because this company is in that much of a free fall. So as he's saying here, oh, well, he's not saying that Jay Rasulo doesn't understand what's going on here. He's saying he's oblivious because I'm just going to say it. Jay Rasulo disagrees with the function and the reasoning behind buying Fox. He doesn't actually not understand why Bob Iger bought Fox. He's saying that Bob Iger should not have bought Fox because it bought into a business model that was based on linear TV. So, but he's glad to try to get shareholders to just read this top line that says Jay Rasulo is oblivious on CNBC.
Well, and again, the other part of that conversation is Rasulo was pointing out that he overpaid substantially for what he was receiving. Because nobody's going to deny that the legacy business is fading. That's just nobody that has a brain is going to think of that. But the assets of those legacy media entities that are fading over time, because again, linear broadcasting is fading. They still have a huge amount of value. Not only that, their advertising dollars are real dollars, and right now you need those real dollars. But what you didn't need was $71 billion worth of debt. You probably only needed about $54 billion in debt, and maybe that would have made everything make more sense. And again,
Especially if they can pair that off with the selling off of the regional sports networks. But instead, it just seems like maybe Bob wanted it, and therefore he had to have it. I'm seeing this as the crowning achievement, supposedly, of Bob Iger's campaign to end his career on a high note, rather than an actual fiscally responsible decision. Guys, do you remember that time I bought Fox? As opposed
yeah,
to actually having to live with the consequences of those actions.
well, he's living with them now, and he's also, the only positive thing that came out of that in that would even have any forward-looking advantages outside of the catalog would be that they got another piece of Hulu.
That's true, and they might be overpaying for that portion of Hulu. They've already paid $8.61 billion, and the question now, of course, is how much more are they going to have to pay? I would say that if it costs $3 to $4 billion for Comcast to build Epic Universe over there, how many theme parks is Bob going to build for the competitor? But I'm trying really hard not to use any mean words here. I'm not like Bob Iger. I don't like to use mean words when describing people I disagree with. But maybe you in the comments below can help us understand, why is it that Bob Iger thinks it's okay to attack his enemies on a personal level, call them inane, oblivious, stupid, etc. Or why are Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo coming at him with facts and logic, as opposed to inane, oblivious, stupid, etc. Of course, that being said, like this video if it's been helpful or informative to you, and please consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.